Hi, welcome back to another video. We are going to get started on Unit 5. Okay, so this is the first section of Unit 5. I would like you to write 5.1 right here because it's Unit 5, Section 1. It'll be our first section. And this is going to help you keep track of which notes belong to which unit. So go ahead and just put that information right there. And we're going to get started on ratios and ratio tables. So our learning intention for this section is to understand ratios of rational numbers and use ratio tables to represent equivalent ratios. You will know that you are successful when you can complete the success criteria. So that is write and interpret ratios involving rational numbers. You can use various operations to create tables of equivalent ratios, and you can use ratio tables to solve ratio problems. So our first section naturally is going to be on our key terms. So these are terms that you're going to need to make sure you're familiar with throughout this unit because you will be hearing these terms frequently. Okay, so the first one is ratio, and ratio is just a comparison of two quantities. So comparison of two quantities. So the example that I have for you here is the ratio of cats to dogs is 3 to 2, meaning for every 3 cats that I have, I will have 2 dogs. And you'll know that it's cats and dogs because if I say cats first, then that means they're going to be my first number. And then dogs was second, so that's my second number. You're always going to know whatever term you said. If I said birds to fish, if I said coins to dollars, whatever I said, whatever when I say first and second is going to determine which number goes to which. So you can write ratios in 3 different ways. So 3 to 2 can be written like this, and this 2 dots in the middle are colons. That's called a colon. So you'd put a 3 colon 2, and that just is 3 to 2. You can write it as a fraction, 3 over 2. Or you can just write it 3 to 2. You can just write it as a word problem. Okay, so these are the 3 ways that you can write it. And you're going to need to know that because you will have some questions that ask you to write it in all three ways. So the next section is the value of a ratio. And so the value of a ratio is the numerical value that is obtained when the two quantities are divided. So what does that mean? If I write my ratio as 3 over 2, that's going to be the easiest way for me to figure out the value of the ratio is to just write it as a fraction or just write it like this I'm going to divide it, 3 divided by 2. So the value of the ratio, 3 over 2, is going to be 1.5 or 1 and 1 half. I just chose to change it into a decimal. Okay, so if I just take this ratio and I divide it, that's going to be the value of the ratio. Equivalent ratios. Equivalent, this is a word we've been talking about a lot. Remember, equivalent just means equal. So equivalent ratios are ratios that express the same relationship. So in a little bit simpler terms, that simply means ratios that are equal. They are the same. Okay. A ratio table now is a table that lists pairs of numbers that form equivalent or equal ratios. So if we are talking about our cats to dogs, if I have 3 cats to every 2 dogs, I would write it in my table like this. Now, if I want to figure out, well, what if I had 6 cats? How many dogs would I have? I would have to say, okay, how I multiplied 3 times what to get to 6? Well, I multiplied 3 times 2 to get to 6. So whatever I do to my cat, I would have to do to the dogs. So just like what we were learning in Unit 4, whatever I do to one side of the expression or the equation, I have to do the other side, right? So 3 times 2 is 6. So 2 times 2 is 4. 3 times 3 is 9. So then I'd have to go 2 times 3 is 6. Whatever I do to this one, I have to do this one. Okay, so if I have 3 cats for every 2 dogs, then I would have 6 cats for every 4 dogs, and I would have 9 cats for every 6 dogs. Okay, so that's what a ratio table does. It just puts all the information out there for us so we can figure out how many of each we would have if we changed our quantity around. So at the bottom of this paper, it's just kind of putting all of that information of the key terms together to give you a better idea of what we're looking at. So it says ratios compare quantities and can be expressed in different forms, including fractions and decimals. The value of a ratio can be found by dividing the two quantities, and ratio tables can be used to organize and find equivalent ratios. Okay, so let's move on to the back side of this paper. Here's what that looks like today. So if you recall, our success criteria tells us that we can write and interpret ratios involving rational numbers. So that's what we're going to do first. So let's see what writing ratios looks like. So here's the question. What is the ratio to stamps to postcards? So the first thing it's asking me is the ratio of stamps to postcards. So stamps is going to be my first number in my ratio, and postcards will be my second number. Then it says write the answer in simplest form using all 3 methods. First, I'm just going to write it normally, and then we'll simplify. So if stamps are my first, I'm going to count them. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I have 4 stamps. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to 6 postcards. So that's one way of writing it. Or I could write it as 4 over 6. Or I could write it as 4 to 6. Those are my 3 ways of writing my ratio. But it says simplest form. Can 4 6 be simplified? Think about that for just a second. Okay, of course it can. So 4 6 would simplify down to 2/3. So now I'm going to write these in simplest form would be 2 to 3, 2 over 3, 2 to 3. This is how I would write my ratio of stamps to postcards. Okay, these are your 3 options. And sometimes you have the option to choose, and you might also be asked to write it a certain way. So make sure that you understand all 3 of the methods, okay? So let's look at this next section. This is ratio tables. So first, a ratio table shows a list of equivalent ratios. There's that word equivalent again. And remember, equivalent means equal. So a ratio table shows a list of equivalent ratios. You're going to fill in the table by multiplying or dividing. Okay, that's how you're going to be able to figure out what the answers are. You're going to multiply or divide the 2 quantities by the same number. So just like we said over here when we were on the first page, and I said whatever I did to my cats here to get the 6, I had to multiply by 2. I would have to do the same thing to the dogs. So 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 2 is 6. Whatever I do to this part of the ratio, I have to do it to this part of the ratio. That's how they become equivalent or equal. Okay, so here is our picture here. So on this side, I have stamps, and I have a blank missing. I have to be able to fill in this blank. And then this section, there's 6 stamps, and there's 18 stamps here. On this side, I have postcards. There's 3, there's blank, and then there's 27. So what I need to figure out is what's missing in here, and how am I going to know this? I'm either going to have to multiply up or divide backwards. Okay, so let's look at 18 to 6. How many 6s did I need to get to 18? So let's think 6, 12, 18. So that means I multiplied 6 by 3 to get to 18, right? So to be able to figure out what's here, so remember, whatever I do to this side, this number to this number, whatever I do here, I have to do here. So now I'm saying this number was multiplied by 3 to get to 27, but I don't know what that number is. So what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to divide. I'm going to do the opposite. So now I'm going to take 27 and I'm going to divide it by 3. What is 27 divided by 3? If you said 9, you are correct. So I'm going to put 9 in the box right there because 9 times 3 becomes 27. So now I know I have the right answer. So how am I going to figure this box out? What am I going to do there to figure out what that's going to be? Well, I can't go up this way because I don't know how many of whatever it took to get to 6. But I can say, now that I know what 9 is, now I can go 3 times what makes 9? 3, 6, 9. 3 times 3 equals 9. So I know whatever I do to this side, I have to do to this side. So this number times 3 equals 6, but I don't know what this is. So now I'm going to divide 6 divided by 3. What is 6 divided by 3? 6 divided by 3 is 2. So I can go 2 times 3 should equal 6. And it does. 3 times 3 equals 9. 3 times something equals 27, which would be 3 times 9 equals 27. 2 times 9 equals 18. So all of these, I should be able to times this by a number to get this, times this number by something to get this. The same numbers that I times on this side, I should be able to times by this on this side to get the same answer. And if I have to go backwards, I'm going to divide. Okay. So I would take 18 divided by 9 to get the 2 if I didn't know what it was. I could take 27 divided by 9 to get to 3. But if I know the answer is going this way, then I could just say 3 times 9 equals 27. So it just depends on what box you're trying to fill in. Some of them you are going to be able to multiply to figure it out. If you're going backwards, making the number smaller, you're going to have to reverse your operation and divide. So let's look down here first real quick at the equivalent ratios box, and let's talk about that for a second. So here's what I want you to tell me. Are these ratios equivalent? Yes or no? So you're going to say, if it is yes, tell me why. If it is not, then tell me no and tell me why. So here's the first one. Are the ratios 4 to 6 and 8 to 12 equivalent? If it is, say yes. Tell me why you believe it is. If it's not, tell me no. Tell me why you think it's not. Same with this one. Are the ratios 5 to 2 and 15 to 6 equivalent? If they are, tell me why. If they aren't, tell me why. So I want you to try this section here. This one you're going to try out for yourself. So these are your try it sections. And these, remember, are non-negotiable. You need to make sure you finish your notes to get full credit, okay? This helps you to understand what you're doing and it helps show me if you're missing any key things that you should know. So you're going to fill in the missing values for each ratio table. So I have a journal to pencils and I have glue to scissors. So for the information here, you have 2 missing boxes here and here. So for every 4 journals, I have 7 pencils. So here I have 12 journals. Now I need to figure out how many pencils would I have if I had 12 journals. So you're going to have to figure out how much did I multiply by 4 to get to 12. Because whatever I multiply on this side, I have to multiply on this side. This one, you have 28 pencils, but we don't know how many journals. So you have options here. You could either do 28, divide it by this number 7 to figure out what's missing here. And then you'd be able to multiply that number by 4 over here. Or you can do 7 times a number. You have to figure out what it is to get to 28. And whatever you multiply 7 by, you're going to multiply by 4 by that same number to get this. Okay, so you're going to do that with both of these. The key here is that you have one section that shows you what both of them, what the ratio value is. So 4 to 7 here, 15 to 27 here. So now you have something to work with to figure out, okay, this to this became what? So then I can figure the equivalent here. And this to this is what? So I can figure out the equivalent over here. So try to see if you can figure out your ratio table. And you're going to show me this set of notes before you move on to your assignment. Any questions, make sure you're asking me because these notes help you to understand the content. And if you aren't completing them, if you're not understanding them, then you're not going to understand the assignments and you're certainly not going to understand the test. Okay, so make sure you're advocating for your own learning and make sure you ask questions or get some clarification if you don't understand. All right, talk to you.